Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Siobhan Schneider. I'm an Associate Executive Director at IASB, and I'm going to ask DT and Amy to unmute and go ahead and introduce themselves so that we can kind of get started on our webinar.
Hello, everyone. DT Magee, Executive Director here at IASB. So we're excited you're joining us for this Delegate Assembly Articles and Bylaws proposed changes. These changes have come about based on our board directing staff to take a look at our bylaws and our Articles of Incorporation and see if we are due for any updates. And of course, we found out that yes, we were. And so that work has been led by our Policy and Governance or Governance and Bylaws Committee, and Amy Jurrens is the chair of that. So I'll pass it over to Amy to introduce herself, and we'll jump into the webinar. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Jurrens. I live up in George, and I am the chair of the Governance and Bylaws Committee. And we've been working as a committee and then with the full IASB board to really comb through and see what needs to be changed in our bylaws and articles of incorporation. So thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much, DT, and thank you, Amy. So as I mentioned, I'm Siobhan Schneider, and I do some of my role here at IASB is to work closely with the Governance and Bylaws Committee and help provide support to that committee and their important work. So we appreciate your time being here, and we'll go ahead and kind of get into the details of the changes that came about. And we're going to start with the process that we used for making changes, proposed changes to the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws for the organization. Before I dig into that, DT or Amy, let me just ask, DT, you kind of gave a nice little background or info. I don't want to cut either of you off. Did you have any particular additional opening comments that you wanted to add, or should we just go ahead and get into it?
I do not. Let's get into it.
I agree.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. All right. So we'll talk a little bit about the process that we used to embark upon this. This process has actually been, at least a year in the making, because there was, the IASB board started receiving some information late fall, early winter about whether or not, or about associate membership in the organization. And we have had historically an allowance in our articles and our bylaws to allow for associate members in the organization, but in practice, we actually have just never had them. We haven't had associate members in any type of recent history. So that allowed us to kind of dig deep, the staff, into a study of other state school boards associations, how they're structured. Do they allow associate members? Do they not allow associate members? Do they have voting rights or not voting rights, et cetera, et cetera? What services might those organizations provide if they're an associate member or if they're a non-member? And so we kind of compiled that information at the request of the board, and the board had an opportunity to review it and gave some good direction to the Governance and Bylaws Committee to kind of go forth and compile that information and propose some different options for the board's consideration of possible updates to the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws. And so the committee put together 3 possible options to the board, and they presented those throughout the spring, in March and then in May. The board got to formally review the changes in May, and they actually selected the option that seemed most appropriate at that time. And then in July, they approved the proposed option for changing the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws to put forth to the Delegate Assembly this fall. So that's kind of the timeline that we use. This has been a careful study over several months. So what are the changes that we're proposing? I'm going to get into some of them, and kind of go through them bit by bit. And I will tell you that you should look at this from a perspective of there's two types of changes that we're going to talk about. One is more substantive change to just codify the practice that we've always been doing, which is we don't have associate members. So you'll see updates relating to removing that option for an associate member, but still providing a pathway to provide services to non-members if the organization chooses. The other section of changes that you'll see are cleanup. And they're just administrative cleanup that are necessary and appropriate anytime you go in and go into the process of updating your articles of incorporation and your bylaws. You just want to make sure that the language that's in there is current. So you'll kind of see that, and we'll go through it here in a little bit more detail. So starting with the articles of incorporation, because those are first, we are clarifying in the proposed changes that our membership includes public school corporations. So you'll see the word corporation added, and that is specific and it's intentional. It's because public school corporations are the legal name of what school districts are in the state of Iowa under Iowa Code Chapter 274. That's how they're described. So instead of just leaving public school in there, we're saying public school corporation. So we want to make sure that our language complies and is very closely aligned with the legal definition of who our members are. You'll also see in there under Article 5 of the Articles of Incorporation that we remove the language that giving the option for associate non-voting members. And again, that's just to clarify our current practices that we don't really have associate members. And so we're just going to eliminate that as an option. Article 6, Section 2. This is one of those administrative cleanups. So you'll see in there that we have individuals' names and titles in our articles. We don't actually need that language in there. And because they no longer, these individuals no longer represent the organization, we're just going to go ahead and update that to remove those. And Article 7, Section 2 has an update. Again, this is just administrative, but we're removing the specific name of the executive director that was in place at the time that the articles were last updated, Ron Rice, and we're just putting in the title. So it'll say executive director. We could have chosen to put in DT's name, but we opted not to, again, just to make that language more evergreen going forward, which is a good and appropriate change for anytime you update your articles. So we'll move on to our Article 2, and I believe this is now in the bylaws section that we're transitioning to, but you'll see we're adding in specific language to say that our members are public school corporations defined in Iowa Code Chapter 274. So again, those are our public school districts. And that clearly delineates that those are who our members are, it's who we serve, and it's central to our mission and our vision. And it would also clarify that for instance, in more recent years, we've had charter schools added as a separate and distinct chapter of the Iowa Code. And they're listed as, they're considered public schools, but they're not public school corporations and they don't live under Chapter 274. So again, this is just clearly delineating where our membership comes from. We also then removed the language on associate membership, again, being consistent with what our practice has been in recent years. So under Article 7, Section 2, again, this is an administrative change. We're removing Ron Rice's name. We're putting in the title instead, the job title, Executive Director. Under Article 3, you'll see some changes to eliminate his/her and put in there. It's administratively easier to refer to and understandable to just include that. So you'll see those changes. And then we also had a one-time provision when school elections changed. It caused a necessary change in our bylaws in recent years to have a one-time period where a couple of our officers served a 3-year term. And so that's already done. It's cycled through and it's completed. So we're just taking that language out again to clean up the language that's present in the bylaws, make everything nice and tidy. There's also a change in here that relates to officers, the election of an officer. And it related to the transition from president-elect of the IASB board to transitioning to president. And there was a statement about whether or not they could continue service if they continued to run for their same position. And we took out the language saying related to, you'll see it here, it was deleted, the for re-election to his or her school board. That was removed because what we said was, if you have an intention to run, but maybe you don't want to maintain your same position, you want to run instead of this for the school board, you want to run for the AEA, or you want to run for community college, you could do that. And it gives you that flexibility because that's your intention to continue to serve in one of our classes of membership, right? So we serve school districts, AEAs, and community colleges. So that's why that language update was made. Article 7, or excuse me, Article 5. Well, you would think after however many years of law school, I would know my Roman numerals, but it is what it is. Article 5, Section 1D. This is language that we added in to clarify in, you'll see, there are 2 statements. This is the first one, and then there'll be a subsequent one. And this relates to members of delegate assembly. We're just clarifying that items will pass in delegate assembly with a majority vote, a simple majority vote of the members present at delegate assembly. And then in Article 6, we deleted references to dues for associate members because, again, we're just clarifying that we don't serve associate members and we don't have that as an option. And then Article 7 is voting for our annual meeting. Okay, so we typically hold those, they're really analogous with delegate assembly, they're kind of go hand in hand, but the annual meeting is still like, it's technically separate. And what we're saying again here is that most action will only require a supermajority or a simple majority to pass. And you'll see a carve out provision. It says unless otherwise required by the Articles of Incorporation, because for instance, there are limited circumstances where you need a supermajority. Updating your Articles of Incorporation is one of those circumstances. So this very action that we're proposing for this year's delegate assembly, it's going to require a 2/3 majority in order to pass. So that's why we have the language in there, is we're just clarifying what actions require what amount of majority to pass. Article 9 is again just administrative cleanup, clarifying language. Same with 10. Grammatically correct is important. And then same here in Article 11, we're removing references to associate membership and we're putting in non-members. Just to clarify that we can still provide limited services to non-members if it's approved by the board. And so one of the questions that we've gotten recently is, well, what services do we envision providing non-members? And some kind of early recommendations would be this, and it's kind of listed in this little chart, but you know, we have members have access to a great number of services from IASB, including workshops and the legal service fund and the policy reference manual, et cetera, et cetera. Non-member services that we may make available at a fee to members that are being considered would include things like the policy reference manual, access to that, and access to, you know, webinars and our annual convention. But those would be the services. It would be limited to that at this time, is the proposal anyway. Due not only to staff capacity, but to ensuring that our resources as an organization are centrally focused on our mission, our primary mission, and our vision. So. Okay, talked a lot. I've gone through quite a few things. I'm going to pause there and check in with DT and Amy and see if you had any additional insights you wanted to offer. And then we're happy to take any questions that that you guys might have. And that can be either unmuting yourself and asking the question, or tossing the question into chat, and we're happy to monitor that and go that way as well. So there are no bad questions, but let me check in with DT and Amy. Do you guys have any insights to add?
One point of clarification, Siobhan, and thank you for hitting on this, is that we wanted to clarify that it takes a majority vote for most of the items that we go through, whether it's at delegate assembly or at the annual meeting. There are specific items that are mentioned that take more than 50% plus one of the members to approve certain action items, like a change to the Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws. And so those are specifically articulated within the Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws, and those are not changing. And so we just wanted to provide clarification that it does take a majority vote of the delegates present to pass those changes.
Thanks, DT. Yeah, that's a good point.
And then I'll just add, those of you who are listening in, if you want to check in with your boards and see if they have any questions and can forward those to us ahead of delegate assembly, that makes sure that we're prepared to answer those questions that might be lingering out there.
Good point. That's really valuable.
We will have our outside legal counsel available at convention to answer any legal questions of why some of the recommendations came from legal counsel for specific language items, especially some of those that are cleanup. And then Amy will be there along with other members of the board, specifically those who serve on the Governance and Bylaws Committee. And then Siobhan will be there, as well as myself. And our board president and our officers will be at delegate assembly as well. So many people that can answer questions and resolve any concerns that may be present or opportunities that may be present for this discussion at delegate assembly.
So I'm going to check in with you guys. Does anybody have any questions that you wanted to go over?
There is a question in the question and answer
Oh, great.
from Rick.
Can you, Amy, can you read it out?
Sure. It says, will this webinar have a summary for board members to share with our other board members and superintendent?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that, Rick. So we have some pretty good written resources related to these changes that we can make sure that we share out. We've been sharing out some notifications and things like that, but we will be sure and share some written resources that we've generated that can help answer some questions for boards between now and November 20th. But you can also, don't be shy about sending questions our way, like DT and Amy had mentioned, so that we can be responsive back to you guys, and also probably share whatever questions you have will be repeated by other districts, so we'll want to share them at delegate assembly too. Any other questions that you guys have?
And I just dropped into the Q&A. We have a link and a document that has some discussion about the proposed IASB Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws Amendment. So on our website, we've got different information under our Delegate Assembly page. So a lot of information out there. Of course, if you have any trouble finding that information, reach out to Siobhan or myself, and we'll be happy to get those links and that information to you as well. And I'll drop that link in the chat as well.
Thanks, DT. All right. Well, I think this one's short and sweet from us today. We really appreciate you guys hopping on and taking the extra time to join us for this discussion today. And we've said it before, but I'm going to say it one more time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and contact us. We're happy to answer any questions you have and provide additional information for you or for your board members if questions develop between now and November 20th. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and thank you so much. I think with that, I think we'll sign off. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.